Hi everyone, it's Jill Rothstein here, author of the Heaven Sent series. My book Atonement is out now. You can get it on Amazon or you can go to my website at jlrothstein.com. I have a very special guest with me today. It's Allison Hubbard, who also writes under the pen name Allison Martine. Welcome to the show, Allison.
Hi, Jen. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. You are a published multi-genre author, so I don't have too many of these on my show. So I'm very excited to talk to you today about writing and about how you go about doing that. So tell the audience a little bit about your pen name and a little bit about the books that you publish.
Well, most people on Twitter and other places know me as a fictional Hubbard, and that always covers me because I only write fiction. I don't write any of these self-help books because I'm of no help to anyone at all. But when it comes to romance, I write under Allison Martine, which is my first and middle name. And Martine is actually a French name. And everybody knows the French are more romantic than the rest of us. So doesn't that just work? Growing up, I hated it because my maiden name was Keen. You can actually see that there, Keen Reserve. That was my maiden name. And I actually rhymed for the first, couple decades of my life because I was Allison Martine Keen. Isn't that lovely? I don't mind it now because I don't rhyme anymore. And so when I write romance, I use Allison Martine. And I have 2 books out in my Bourbon book series, Dibs and Since September. And I also am actually, I think of myself more as a literary sci-fi writer because that's what I was doing first. That's where my heart belongs. And I plan to publish those books under A.M. Hubbard, which is just my first 2 initials. But for those works, one of my books is out on submission right now with my agent, Naomi Davis, with Bookends Literary. So for those who are not as used to the traditional publishing timetable, it is really slow. So I signed with her back in May and we did a few early revisions and now my book is out on submission. So I'm sitting there going, okay.
Hurry up and wait.
so much hurrying up and waiting, and it's really kind of crazy because I didn't write the Bourbon books until the beginning of 2020, and within 2020 I've written 3 of them and published 2 of them, whereas the literary sci-fi took years to write, and then it didn't take that long to get an agent, but now it will probably sit on submission for how many more calendar pages do we have? And apparently that's normal, but COVID has slowed it down even more. So I'm trying to stay patient with that and trust that my agent will do what she needs to do. And I'm just like, I'll just be over here waiting.
So the traditional publishing process, that's like a book a year, right? Is that still the timetable? Or?
I don't even know if it's that. It may even be slower because if you look at a lot of traditionally published authors, it's pretty slow and every step takes time. So I feel like I kind of I'll just say it, I got lucky connecting with Naomi pretty quickly after Pit Mad because I finished my book. It's called The Garibaldi Waltz just before Thanksgiving because I remember being Thanksgiving break and giving my beta copies out to friends who were like, I need a physical copy. And I'm like, I got to print how many pages? Because it's kind of long. Yeah. So I got that out to people then. And it's actually right after that I had heard about Pit Mad. And I was looking into doing Pit Mad and realized this book isn't ready to pitch yet. I'm just getting it to betas. I need to get some time to polish it and everything. So I didn't pitch it in that time period of Pit Mad. I didn't start pitching it until the very end of January for a sci-fi fantasy pit, got rejected with that. And then I pitched in March's Pit Mad and ended up signing with my agent right after that. So that's actually a pretty tight turnaround from finishing the book in November and signing in May. That's I'm not going to complain about that. But the normal timetable is pretty slow because even if you get an offer right away and then you get the book, say, okay, it's going to be published, it probably won't come out for another year or 2.
Right. So
I know people are like, oh, I can't wait to read it. I'm like, you're going to have to.
Sorry, not
in
coming
the
out
meantime, while you're waiting, I have other books for you.
Now what made you write the romance if you feel like your heart is in sci-fi? Is that just to keep you occupied? Is that because you just can't help yourself? You have to get yourself involved in all these things, or what?
It was so crazy. I joke about this because if you would have told me this time last year, oh, hey, you're going to have books published next year, I'd be like, great. And someone would say, and they're romance, I would have just laughed you out the door because like romance, I don't read romance. I don't like romance. Romance is awful. Why would anybody? Okay, so remember I said Pit Mad?
Yeah.
I connected with the writing community in a meaningful way. That's the first time. Got connected on Facebook, getting to know other authors that way. And before that, all my other betas were just friends of mine, and some of them knew what they were talking about in the literary world. Like one of my betas who has baited for me for years now is a literary professor. So it's not like I didn't have people who knew what they were doing, but I didn't have any other authors. And I thought, oh, I'd like to do that. Well, the way you get betas is you do crit swaps. So I said yes to things that I probably normally wouldn't pick up from a library. And I went into it figuring, well, I will hold those genre expectations loosely. But I tell you, the very first one that I read made me just angry. not because the book wasn't well written or anything like that, but just the character was one I just wanted to knock her head against a wall till there was some sense in it. The relationships felt forced and awful, and I just thought, please tell me this is not what romance is like, because that's honestly what I kind of thought romance was. It fit with what I thought romance had been. But I just went, no, I'd wanted to write something else, but my brain was still kind of in overdrive from finishing this novel that literally took years. And the biggest reason it took years is I have 3 little kids. The youngest had just started preschool when I was about halfway through with it. And then I was able to finish it up in a couple months because then I had a dedicated writing space when he'd go to preschool.
Yeah.
But that book that I read, it frustrated me so much that I said, I'm going to write my own just for fun. Just to see. And I just sat down and whipped out a book in 13 days.
Wow.
And I sent it to a couple of my beta reader friends who I'd connected to who were other authors, but who did read romance. Because I went into it going, I don't really know what romance should have. So I don't know if this is right. I don't know if this is what, they're going to say, this is not what, I don't know what you did here, but this is not romance. Please take it away. And the first one who read it, she read it almost in just one night, but her Kindle died. And then she was mad because her Kindle died. So she had to charge it back up and then finished reading it and then demanded a sequel. So then I wrote her a sequel.
And you're so good to your readers. They could just demand sequels and you
I didn't want her to be mad at me. I love her so much. No, but she was somebody I'd only connected with as another author. So she wasn't somebody I thought was just telling me this because she didn't want to hurt my feelings, because she was a lifelong friend. Because if she would have said, you don't know how to write romance, I would have just laughed along and gone, nope, I really don't. But was that kind of fun anyway?
Yeah.
And what I ended up doing then was, a lot of people who had started reading my literary sci-fi novel who hadn't had a chance to really because of the holidays, I did one of these. Whoop.
Yep, here you go.
I know you were supposed to read this, but how about you don't read that till later? Go ahead and read this instead and tell me what you think. And the feedback was so positive that I thought, maybe I could try pitching this. And I ended up going ahead with that and ended up going with a small publisher. And that's a very long story, but not for this interview, but I ended up getting published in the middle of April for a book that I wrote in January. So
very exciting. I'm sure there's a lot of authors watching this show right now who are very envious of the story, but I think they should hold out hope for this. This stuff happens. It's about connection. It's about building your brand. It's about engaging with people. It's about taking those chances, get out there, do your pit mad.
Try a genre that you don't necessarily know what you're doing, and you may end up writing a book that people say, this is my new favorite romance. Or the other thing that I get, and this I actually do understand, is I've had a lot of people who are like, I don't read romance, but I'll read it because you asked me to, or because I liked the other book you wrote, because they maybe have read my sci-fi and they're like, oh, I do like romance because I like this. So I also joke it's the romance for people who don't actually like to read romance. But it works. It gives you the feels, and I loved writing it, and I've got the 2 out. Dibs came out in April, like I said, and since September, I launched in September. If I had it to do over, I don't know if I would have launched it that soon, just because you can push books out really quickly. People can't necessarily keep up with reading all of them.
Right.
So my 3rd book is done. It's in beta right now, and I was talking about releasing it in Christmas, but I'm not going to be ready for it in Christmas. And I want to make sure it's as strong as it can be, and that I'm not under some artificial timeline or deadline that I'm just putting on myself for no reason, just to shove out another book. So I'm thinking maybe Valentine's Day. I don't know.
Well, that would be a good time for that, right?
It's romance. There you go.
Yeah, you were picking the right time of the year for that. So, but that's very exciting, and it's very interesting, and I would love to have you back to talk about that longer story about publishing, because I just don't think enough of us get that opportunity to tell our stories and have other people learn from them. There's always something that somebody's going to learn from listening to bits of your story and other stories of people I've had on the show. So thank you for sharing that. So we will jump into your questions, which your first one is one of my favorites, and I don't get to ask it enough, which is, what is your favorite movie based on a book?
So I was going to be a little extra special and say, I don't really, okay, there are some good movies based on books, but I wanted to answer it based on TV shows because so few books really can fit into just 1 hour, or not 1 hour, but one single movie. So I feel like the book to movie thing, it almost always is missing stuff just because you can't shove everything in there.
Right.
I would say for me, like, yes, they've done some good things with, everyone thinks Lord of the Rings was very well done, but I have loved some of the TV adaptations of certain books. And my favorite, I will say, okay, well, it's tied. I love The Magicians so much. Love Grossman's The Magicians. I don't know if you've read that.
I have not.
So here, this is the blasphemous part. Don't read the books. The show is so good. It's dark and it's beautiful. It's basically Harry Potter meets Narnia, but for grown-ups, and just wicked dark, just gorgeous.
Really?
Yes. And I think you can find it on Netflix now. It used to be on Sci-Fi, but I think the show is now ended. We cut our cable, so I didn't see the last season live. So I don't know how the last season went. I actually would have been fine if it ended where it did with the season finale of the last season I saw. But I was probably about 3 seasons in when I said, well, now I'm going to go back and read the books. And the books just, the characters aren't the same. I don't love the characters the way they're portrayed in the books as they are on the show. And some of that I'll just give to the actors. The actors are just absolutely amazing. One of my favorite actors on the show, his name is Hale Appleman. He plays Elliot Wall. The character in the books is just, he's flat and he's unlikable. And who he brings to life is just, my heart just falls every time I see him. It's just gorgeous. So I'm almost like a proselyte of everybody, please go watch The Magicians, but not if you're squeamish, because it will get dark, bloody, and really awful.
Well, if you like fantasy, then you should like it, because
it's fantasy. But if you're very precious about your Narnia or your Harry Potter, you will probably be offended in the first like half hour and go, okay. A close second with that would be The Expanse, but it's swapped because the Expanse books, which are by James S.A. Corey, that's sci-fi, those books are the best science fiction that has come out in the last decade. No question there. And the show is very good and very well acted, but that's one of the cases where the show just can't quite get as much as what the book can hold.
Yep.
But the new one that I would say, though, is, I don't know if you've seen Lovecraft Country.
No.
Every episode is a movie. It's seriously, every episode is practically a movie. I mean, they're not movie length, but each one could almost stand alone, and they are beautiful and they are gorgeous. And the whole reason I talked my husband into getting HBO just to watch this, first I'm like, we don't have date nights, where are we going? You can afford to get me HBO.
That's right.
You're not buying a movie ticket. Is the man who wrote the book that the show is based on, Matt Ruff, is going to be interviewed on our show Vox Vomitus on November 11th. So I'm like, this is research. I have to do this.
Yeah.
So I'd already listened to one of his books, his most recent one, which is 88 Names, and really enjoyed that. But I'm like, I think I need to see this too. So now I'm actually going back and reading the book and seeing where the differences are. And the book is so far very strong. So I'm going to want to see afterwards where they are a little different. But I can't say that the book, even if the book is amazing, that book could not be any more amazing than what that show was. So I'm just like, everybody, please go watch Lovecraft Country and then pick your jaw up off the floor when you're done. Yeah.
I'll have to try it. I'll have to try it. I'll go look for that.
You know, it's worth the HBO.
Yeah.
Well, Game of Thrones is over. Go watch something.
I know. I love Game of Thrones. Okay, so your next question revolves around advice for writers. So what is your advice for new writers just starting out? Or it doesn't have to be one piece, but what is your overall sort of tidbits that you give to new writers?
It's kind of tied together. Betas are your friends. Get your betas, because I've talked to a lot of writers in the querying trenches who are like, well, I'm afraid to let anybody else read my work, or, I love it the way it is. I don't want any changes. Well, okay. back to the two publishing paths. If you self-publish, you can do whatever you want. And if you don't want anybody to tell you what to do differently, do your own thing. And then if the reviewers come out and say, I don't know what's happening here, but it was not very good, well, then you take your risks. But if you're going to go the traditional publishing way, your agent will probably have you make changes. An editor is probably going to make you make changes. And if you are so married to every single syllable, you are going to have a hard time in this business doing that. Now, if you just want to I just want to write my stories and release them into the wild like little butterflies, knock yourself out. But I've made so many great relationships with fellow writers, and those betas who can be honest with you and tell you this doesn't quite work, or tell you this is where the humor hits, or you do realize this word is not what you think it means. Those people are gold. Hold on to them.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard to find those people, because I know that until I had connected with people through PitMad, I had a few just happy to read friends, and they were the kind who would read your book and go, I loved it. And they just stare at you blankly for a while. And the thing that I learned from a friend, I'm going to name drop Frances White because I love her. I don't know if she's ever going to see this, but I love you, Frances, X-Moon Lily on Twitter. She's the one who showed me to do a beta questionnaire, to write up a series of questions, some real basic, like, how would you review this if you were going to review it? Would you recommend this to a friend? How would you describe this to a friend? But also more complicated things about asking about specific characters. And if you've got people coming back going, I don't remember who this character was, take a look at that. Or were there any scenes that made you uncomfortable, or anything that didn't really work for you? Or what did you think of this particular scene? Those were things that I didn't start doing until I connected with her and she gave me hers. And it was so helpful, because there were a lot of those betas that I had who were like, that if I gave them that, they would give me good feedback, but they needed to be told, like, specifically, here are the questions to be thinking about. And if I asked them a pointed question, I'd get an answer that if I just asked them a blanket question, they're like, and wouldn't give me that critical feedback that I need, because I wanted my books to be as good as they could be, not just good enough. And I know that the friends who won't, they won't be as just blunt with you. They might answer a question more bluntly if you tell them, hey, I want to make this as best it can be, and you're not going to hurt my feelings. So I know I've had some friends who are critique partners of mine who will send me things going, I hated you for a while after you sent me this. Then I stopped hating you. And I go, you know what? I'd rather have you hate me and take real care of what I said and think of what I was trying to have you look at and have you make it a stronger thing, than be frustrated that you're getting things rejected by agents, or if you're publishing on your own, that you're getting critical feedback that people are saying this doesn't work and here's why, because I'd rather have you fix it ahead of time. So that's my big thing, is I'm all about the betas, and I'm all about the beta questionnaire. And if anybody's seeing this and goes, can you show me yours? Message me. I will happily give you a sample one, because I've shared it before. It's not like it's a trade secret or anything. It's just real basic questions that help you figure out what's working, what's not, pacing, character, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I think you have to have the right attitude when it comes to editing or to critiquing. Is you have to come at it from the point of view of, this person's trying to help me. I think if you come at it from the person that this is a combative situation or an enemy situation or an uncomfortable situation, you're not starting out in the right space. To receive, no matter what the feedback is. It's
hard, because they're like, this is my baby, and I totally get that, but at the same point in time, your baby's going to go out into the world without you, and we're all going to
be unprepared.
We're all going to get the reviews that we go, that one hurt, that one stung, and it's better to get it ahead of time and be able to maybe do something about it than have it released and then go, all right, well, I don't have a second chance with that reader to ever have them want to buy a book by me.
And you want feedback that's helpful, right? Because if you just send it out, you might get, this book sucks. And you'll never know what that really means. You'll never know if that was a point of view issue, or too many characters issue, or plot problem, or that you had a lot of misspellings, or formatting issues. You'll never know what that means. And you can't do anything with that feedback. You can't fix that. You can't correct it. You can't take it back. You also can never decipher it. You'll just live with it. So it's always better to have
those enigmatic lower stars where we're like,
Yeah.
I mean, we might all get reviews that we don't really understand, even when there are words there, but that's okay. That people are weird.
Well, and you'll always get that no matter who you are. I remember saying to somebody that J.K. Rowling has 1 and 2 and 3-star reviews out on Amazon. You can go look at them. You can go see them for yourself if you don't believe me. And people are like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, those exist. Like those happen. So you can go out and you can see it for yourself." So those, I think, you kind of learn to dismiss and understand that they sort of come with the territory. But
totally.
you definitely want ones that can be helpful. And I mean, I'm self-published, but I still hired an editor because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I need someone to look at I'm an accountant. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I had the story and I put it together and I fell in love with it and fell in love with these characters and was like, I need some help here. Like, I need to know where to go with this. I need to know what to learn. And I went and applied and went back to graduate school, and I'm working my way through.
Graduate school for?
Creative writing. So
awesome.
So I'm like, I'm learning. Like, I wasn't going to send this out without someone looking at it, and she's tough. And that's that, she's like, this is what you need to learn. This is what you need to focus on. So I tell people that story, so that they understand it's everybody. It isn't just you. This is the process.
It's a craft and it's a process, and all of those things are important. And definitely, like, to know, hey, we are all still working on it. That even, maybe Stephen King gets away with it, but just about everybody, it's going to go through other people. It's going to go through people who are making changes along the way. And we have to have basically open hearts to write, and then thick skin for the next stages.
Yeah. And I think you have to understand that unless you're, some super fortunate and genius person, you aren't getting it on the first time, especially when I'm talking to someone who's just putting their first book out or attempting to put their first book out like me. It's like, no, I know my whole goal has to be that every book gets better, right? That the next book. So I secured the same editor, and she was like, okay, well, this is what we're doing now. Now we're going one level deeper. Like, this is the whole point, right? Like you know what I mean? You sort of look at this, like, you covered a lot of things. You made a lot of advancements. You did really well, but now we have to go further. And every book you write, you should come at it like that. You should come at it like you're trying to learn. I think I'll probably spend my whole lifetime and never get to where Stephen King is, and that's totally fine. But it's certainly not a situation where you just write and throw it out there and say,
and we joke their first draft is your vomit draft, where you are just getting it on page, because you can't edit an empty page. Everybody knows that. And I know a lot of times people then become married to that vomit draft, and we should not marry vomit drafts. That's just not a good idea. But then to also be really just gentle with yourself, understanding that your first draft doesn't have to be perfect, but that it's all part of that process. So that's actually what we joke, that our podcast is called Vox Vomitus, which is fake Latin for word vomit. I mean, if you really translate it, I think it means like vomitus means to be emptied, and vox means voice. So it means like emptied voice, but we just say it's fake Latin for word vomit. So we talk to authors about their awful drafts that never got published. Fancy authors who have stacks of books behind them, they have those books that they don't show anybody either. So there's no shame in it. No. It's all just part of the process.
But I think that's really helpful to say, especially if you have other authors watching or listening to these shows and trying to get little tidbits of information. They need to hear someone say, like, nothing is perfect the first time we put it on paper. And it's really hard to find your own mistakes. There's a reason that you ask somebody else to read something that you write. Is you could go over it 100 times and you're so unlikely to find everything wrong with it.
That is true. I'll just throw this one other little tidbit in, is depending on what program you use, not everything has it. Word does. I swear by the read aloud function, because my eyes will lie to me, but my ears don't. Because somebody else's voice is reading it to you, and then you will catch things that your eyes just skim over. The they that should have been the word foot instead of food. They're very similar, and your eye will just autocorrect it. But you can't. So that's a good thing to do, maybe even before you give it to the betas, just to save them from that really bad thing.
And I would also say sometimes you think that reads really well, and it is a book after all, someone's going to be reading it. But then when you read it aloud, you're like, oh, I would never say something like this. This doesn't even sound natural. Like, especially when you're talking about dialogue. I find myself reading dialogue aloud a lot because it's like, does this sound like something that I would actually say, or that I would expect to hear someone in this particular situation say? And a lot of times I'll read it and be like, yeah, it sounds good. And then I'll read it all out and be like, oh no, this something needs to change and go back. So I'm a big fan of that as well. So, all right. So what's next for you?
So what's next for me? So I picked this one to give me a hard question, those tough questions, because so right now I'm in the middle of working on revisions for my literary sci-fi novel that is already on submission. So you go like, well, how are you doing both? But I am, because there's an editor who's asked me to do it. So it's this weird process that it may or may not result in a book deal. I'm crossing my fingers it does, but it may not. So right now I'm still doing that, and it's something I don't necessarily put out there, but I feel like it's something I should talk about, because from what I've understood from other published authors, R&Rs, revise and resubmits, are really common, and we shouldn't be afraid of them. They don't necessarily mean you're going to get a deal or not, but it's something that you shouldn't be afraid of doing. So that's kind of sucked my brain in, because I'm back in this literary sci-fi world that I've been out of for a while. And when I'm done with that, and that doesn't mean like done and the book's published, but at a stopping point where I can step back from it, I'd like to start something new. And I'm kind of on the fence of whether I will do another literary sci-fi or I'll jump back into another romance, because where I need to go right now is I need to finish the revisions on the third book in the Bourbon book series, because one of my lovely betas suggested I tweak the ending. And when we talked through what changes she wanted and why she wanted them, I'm like, that totally makes sense, and we can do it in this way, and we kind of work through it. So again, betas are gold. But I'm one of those people, I know some people are project hoppers. I'm not. I need to be like completely immersed in one thing and then stopping point and can move on. So I know for me, I got dibs to publication and then was doing the edits that my agent wanted me to do for her before she started submission for my literary sci-fi. Then when that was done, then it was like, okay, well, now I need to do the revisions. Then next I wrote the third book in the Bourbon book series. Then I got that to stopping point, and then I went back and did the revisions for the second one, which is Since September, before launching it in September. So I kind of am not one of those people who will be writing in the morning and editing in the afternoon. And I know authors who work like that. I am jealous of them, because I would like to be able to do that. So I'm thinking it'll probably be another literary sci-fi, because I've had some ideas floating around out there, and I am a complete and total pantser. So I don't have outlines or anything. I've got some character ideas that are kind of floating around out there. And when I actually sit down and say, all right, let's just see what happens, I'll go with it from there. And if I get completely stuck and go, I need to just put this aside, I can go back and do the revisions. So I actually feel like I'm accomplishing something. And do those revisions for the third book. It doesn't even have a title. I'm sorry I keep calling it the third book, but it's kind of funny, because the few titles that I like are so misleading that when I've told them to people, they're like, oh, I like that. And I say, but doesn't it make you think this? And they're like, oh, yeah, it does. I'm like, that's why I can't do it. And I know this makes no sense without context, but I'm working on something. And I will say that the cover, since the Bourbon books are all making me look like a giant lush, like Dibs has Bourbon on the cover. Since September has, the light is bad here, but there's my champagne.
Yep, the wine glass, the champagne glass. Yep.
Yeah, the third one is going to have a shot of tequila. So,
because why not?
Because why not? Well, it all goes back to the storyline. So they all have strategic reasons. They're not just fun branding and excuses for Allison to drink.
Although it helps.
It helps. Do I need an excuse? No, not really. But that's what I'll probably be doing. But I would love to be able to be back recording on Twitter, like I've got this many words done, and then because I haven't had that to report for a while. It's been more of the promotions and all this stuff, and sometimes really great things. Like we were talking beforehand, Dibs got named as a finalist for the Kindle Book Awards in the romance category, and for a debut novel and a genre I didn't know I was writing in, I'm really happy with that.
Yay! Congratulations.
And Thank you. And it was the category winner for Reader's Choice. And we were joking ahead of time. It doesn't actually say that I won the category. I'm the category leader. So I feel like I'm a line leader of little children going to school. I don't know what that means. I'm waiting to hear back from them to see if I get a cute little ribbon to put on my pictures, to show, hey, it won an award. It won some recognition. But that's mostly what I've been doing, is just trying to let people know, hey, these books are out here. These books are, yeah, and that's draining. Like, I love the relationship stuff. Like, I love being on Twitter and messing around with people that I feel like I actually know now. Yeah. Just throwing the book out into the wind and going, please, anybody? that is not my favorite thing to do ever, but I'm also trying to learn the whole Bookstagram thing. I don't know if any of you saw my attempt to do the foot stack challenge. Have you seen those? When someone sits there with their foot up in the air. So imagine my hand is my foot. I'm not doing this now because I'm in a dress. And they stack books on their foot. I did it yesterday with a couple books and a pumpkin in heels.
Oh gosh.
Because I'm an idiot and I'll try anything. Like, that looks fun. But hey, why not?
Why not? This is the right attitude to have. Absolutely the right attitude. That all sounds very exciting. And I know promotion could be draining, that would much rather be writing or creating something, but unfortunately it is part of what we do. So that is very exciting. Again, congratulations in that category. I'm very envious. So you're a winner to me. I think I would put that out there. I would put that out there on your behalf, that you won the category. You're a leader. So
I can put it out there. Make your own category leader ribbon competition. Make whatever ribbon that should look like, because no one really knows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
little
right.
Children following you.
That's right. You could put that out there as and the contest winner, like a contest. You should put that out as a contest. The contest winner gets a free signed copy.
I would happily do that. Here you go, guys. I have no idea.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you doing this for me, and I hope everyone learned a little something as they tuned in, and I hope they go and follow you and they buy all your books. Go out, you can find them on Amazon. You can get them now and stay connected with you and hear more about your sci-fi series as you go along. So thanks again so much, and thanks everybody for tuning in and watching. Bye everyone.